you are just joining us on Facebook Live, I am Lauren Van Hemert, and I am joined tonight by my friend and colleague David Chavez, who's in the Bay Area. Where exactly are you in the Bay Area?
I am in San Jose, California, about 40 miles south of San Francisco.
All right. And I love taking these virtual field trips everywhere through Zoom. So, talk to me. Before we get into theater criticism stuff, it seems like a minute ago we were in New York, sitting at
Yes.
Oklahoma.
Yes, yes. I
Oh,
know.
but tell me what the theater landscape looks like in the Bay Area these days, amidst COVID. Because I mean, it's an active theater community there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as far as just what's been going on over here, you definitely have, people really trying to figure out, the online platforms, Zoom plays. A lot of, I think something that's happened over the course of this time is that our kind of our theater community has really expanded into kind of across the country and in different ways, just because you're not accessing your local content, but you are accessing content from everywhere else. So just last night I was watching Karen Zacharias has a production right now on Oregon Shakespeare Festival called The Copper Children. So I had not been. It's only about 6 hours away from you, but I had not been to the Oregon Shakespeare Festival before, and I was planning to go this summer. But you're accessing content that you wouldn't be able to normally access. So as far as the Bay Area, there's definitely people putting out things. There's a lot of things on Zoom, like anywhere else. Um, and a lot of, I think what's happening out here is, like everywhere else, companies are just really trying to stay afloat and trying to, keep their name out there. I was able to watch a few, like there's a theater company in San Jose that does like a weekly series where one was the former artistic director. He did a whole seminar on Hamlet, about an hour on a Friday night. So it's one of those things where they encourage you to grab some wine, grab a drink, come and even engage in some of the more popular shows of the company. And we have some of the actors that are going to talk about the process, writing about or reading some of the excerpts from the show. So a lot of it is just really just, I think, people just trying to keep those muscles going and just staying active and keeping their name out there, with the knowledge that we will come back from this at some point. And when we are, we want to feel like we could kind of jump in full bore and make it happen.
I hope so. I do hope
Yes.
so. I was looking at the impact survey from the Americans for the Arts. And according to that survey, the California companies who responded to that survey, about 42% of the arts organizations say they may not survive COVID.
Yeah.
Is that consistent with what you're hearing?
I think so, because I think you're also seeing people, and it's funny because, like, here's a quick example. Last night I'm watching Copper Children, which is really, really good, just beautifully sculpted and just, very, very well done. But I'm watching it in today's times, and you see the lights go down, and then you hear like some coughs in the audience. So, and that today that throws you off because you're like, oh wow, So it's the companies will come back. There will be plenty that don't, unfortunately. Um, but then again, there's the question of who's going to go. Like, who has theater in their lives where it's so important, where they're willing to just kind of go and, that first time you hear a cough in an audience, what do you do? Like, how do you react to that? So that right there makes it really tricky as far as what to plan for. Because I did see another survey from the American Theater Magazine, which was basically a good chunk of people are like, I'm not in any hurry to get back. So to think like we're going to just throw up a show and it's going to sell out for weeks, probably not realistic at this time.
Well, and it cracks me up what some of the theaters are doing. I don't know. One of our colleagues shared the Beef and Boards dinner theater
Yes.
promo out of Indianapolis, and I
Yes.
literally laughed out loud because they showed performers on stage wearing face shields, singing and dancing. I was like, on what planet is that gonna happen?
Yeah, yeah. It is absurd. Like I saw that too, and it's like, and it's like who is putting people out there for entertainment consumption, and who's saying let's get tickets for that? That's it's all so strange, and it's just really a strange thing to be thinking in those terms right now, because I'm not thinking about going to see a show right now. I'm not like, oh my God, Beef and Boards is coming up Friday night. Hey, let's get that press agent, see if I can get it. I'm not doing that. And who knows when? I mean, who knows when?
Does the virtual stuff, um, does the virtual theater do it for you in the same way that live? I'm struggling with the virtual. I've seen some productions that I I'd like to say I tolerate because I miss theater and they're done okay. I mean, for what it is. And then I've seen some productions that are trying to be movies and it's
Yeah.
really loses the live theater experience. So what's your take on the whole virtual?
It's I think it's a mixed bag. I think some of it is really good. Like I saw the Public Theater's production of The Line, which I
Mm.
thought was really good. I enjoyed it. I thought but you also have a fantastic group of actors in that production. So, some of the people in that show, you see pretty regularly. So that was really enjoyable. But I find myself when I watch not so much like a Zoom play, but when I watch a play that is like a Hamilton or Copper Children, I watch these shows and I find myself getting wistful because I'm like, I know the feeling of sitting in a darkened theater as the house lights go down, or just the announcements, or just the little minutia that comes with, when we watch and when we experience a show from start to finish. The feeling that you get while you're like, I just love that feeling of looking through a program in a musical as I listen to the instruments warm up,
Yes.
and it's just the ambiance, just you just it's just and theater crowds are so different in terms of the style of show you're going to go see, or the theme, or so you just obviously are not going to get that when you're sitting in your living room watching Hamilton or watching anything. um
It's not the same.
it's not the same, but on the flip side, it's what we have right now.
Yeah.
It is an opportunity to see shows in places where I probably wouldn't necessarily get to, the national theater things. Would I love to go to London every other month and see what's there? Of course. Or would I love to get to New York, once every 3 or 4 months? Heck yeah. But I'm hoping some of that sticks around. I don't know if the Zoom stuff is going to stick around, because right now it feels like there are people that need it.
Mm.
But on the flip side, is it something that is just here for this moment in time until we can get back to some normalcy?
The interesting thing about Zoom and a lot of the conversations I was having with artists and companies early on is how accessible it's making theater to people who otherwise wouldn't be
Absolutely.
able to go. So
Yeah.
that part is good. That's
Yeah.
the thing. So I have mixed emotions about it, but yeah.
Yeah. As an experience, it's not going to be watching a show live the way we like to experience those things. But on the flip side, if we can't get there, and if it's a way to support artists, if it's a way to support Oregon Shakespeare Festival, if it's a way to support some of these other companies that need our support, and I can't think of any companies that don't. If that's the way to do that, and it also gives me access to content that I might not have access to before. If I can,
Absolutely.
but then again, on the other side, um, there at some point, depending on how long we're in this, um, I'm sure that there's going to be a lot more attention paid to how these things are filmed, the quality of that. Of course, if everything is filmed with the Disney quality of Hamilton, it sure makes it a whole lot easier to
Oh yeah,
watch. But
it's a lot of
Yeah,
more palatable.
yeah, but how much of that are we getting? And so I don't know. It's all just kind of muddled right now. But if we can support companies and they're putting out content and it's things I might not have seen beforehand and I have the time to see it, that could be good.
The other thing that concerns me about it is to be able to see a national theater production, let's say for $10 or £10, whatever it is.
Yes, yes.
Are we? Is the public going to go back to regular ticket prices on the other side of this? And that also concerns me. Are we spoiling people too much? Is it going to hurt the theaters in the long run? I don't know the answers to that question, but I that is my concern as well.
And that's always been a question of how equitable is theater. How accessible is it to you know the average person,
Yeah.
with the average salary, how much people that are kind of in the median income
Luxury
folks.
for most.
It's well, yeah, and so we're in a position to kind of see anything we want because we're reviewing it, we're engaging it, we're featuring it, we're promoting it in some cases. But the average person who has to buy a ticket for $100 depending on the show, or $20 depending on what show, and $20, like, okay, that's doable. But let's just say you take your wife and your daughter or son or whatever, and we're talking $80 for one show. And
And
so yeah, so it's really it's how is theater going to be equitable, how is theater going to be able to reach out and make sure that everybody has access to it. And I think it's a question that we've been asking forever, but it's taken on a different urgency now because companies want to survive, but like you're not going to get me at $200 a ticket, so yeah.
Now, you've also been a theater educator and worked in the public school system there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of talk right now about kids going back to class. We talked about before we went online, you have school age children.
Mm-hmm.
As a person who's been in the school system, what is your take on kids going back to school and arts education online? How do you do that?
It's a great question. First of all, I am definitely someone that is like, we can't go back to school until we have a hold of this thing. And uh, ideally, I have my middle daughter, she'll be in high school. So I'm going to have two high school daughters, but I have a third grader. And clearly, online learning for a third grader who wants to get in the middle of things and play and engage with friends. And my 8-year-old is really that kind of kid that's like she goes on campus and it's just her element. She's like, hey, there's so and so, hey, what are you doing, hey, guess what I'm doing. And she's not going to have that engagement. And 4 months later she was having a picnic on Zoom where she wanted a blanket set up out in our patio. So you're just not getting those things now. But realistically, we can't really go back to school. We can't really produce a musical and have a third of the capacity in the theater because who are you producing things for? Your classmates, your friends, your teachers, your parents, family. So all of that stuff's very, very limiting. I guess right now there is some advantages because I left the theater teaching about 2 or 3 years ago, and in that time since I've been gone, it always seems like when you leave something, that's when all the cool stuff comes in. So like it always seems to be that way for me anyway. But you had a lot of really good online content, like theater wise you have some really good online content that you can access. I know like Alexis Solowski of the New York Times, she has a web series, it's through Crash Course, and it's all about theater history. So those types of things you could go and you could turn into things, and you could be creative in ways. Now it's never going to replace being in a classroom and being in a group and putting things together, or working on a show and having kids rehearse in one room while they work on dance in another room, and then the end of rehearsal, which you all hold hands and like run and scream and like and all that stuff. You can't do that. And until we have the health part figured out, and that clearly is the most important thing at this time, until we really have a handle on that and how we can do it safely and follow guidelines and follow, health experts, people that study this stuff, until we have answers from them, we're kind of in a holding pattern. It is what it is.
Absolutely, it is. I do want to get into theater criticism, but before I dig
Yeah.
into that, you have been covering the arts in the Bay Area since like 1990. So clearly you were 4 when you started.
No,
Is that your
yeah. Oh, you're
bio?
so kind. You're so kind, Lauren. Did I tell you how much I love you? Well, I haven't yet. I'm doing it now. No, I actually started writing about end of 2000, 2008, 2009 is kind
Okay.
of when you saw like blogs starting, like websites were popping up and blogs were starting. And there was this horrible website that, it was kind of like this attempt at citizen journalism where, hey, if you're an expert in water bottles, you could be the water bottle examiner. And if you know about it was really kind of like, I say that somewhat in jest, but it was really kind of like that, where like, I know all about wood. I'm the wood examiner. And I just applied, and to do theater. But I had done some reviewing back. When I was a student at Fresno State in Central California. I was a reporter for the Fresno Beat. I was on the city desk, night beat, but I would freelance for features. So I did a lot of concert reviews and play reviews. But really, like in earnest, I've been writing pretty regularly since about 2009. So what, 11 years?
11 years.
Yeah.
At what point did you have the aha moment that you were a writer?
Oh, wow. Good. Wow. Um, that is a really interesting question. I the thing that scared me when I first started up in 2009, like just like this is going to be a regular part of my existence, was doing reviews, writing reviews. So I would always reach out because I had training as a journalist at that time. I did a lot of features writing, so I would reach out to companies and just say, "Hey, can I write a feature about your show? Can I talk to a director? Can I talk to an actor? Do an interview and write that stuff up." So I was, when you offer people a free service, like, "Hey, just give me an interview, and you're going to get a free way to publicize your story, your show." I did that a lot, but I found myself getting a lot of invites. Like, "Hey, could you review our show? Would you be willing? Let us know if you want to come." And I was always a person like, "Yeah, okay, I'll let you know." And I never would, because it's a whole different muscle to review. To really find and pick apart what works for a show, what doesn't work, uh, the difference between your own perspective and what you don't understand and what you do. It's just all the little details. So that scared me. So I just reached a point where I couldn't push it off any longer, because it just like, "Oh, can you come? Can you come? Can you come?" And then at that point, once I started it, I really found myself kind of embracing the challenge, like really like, "Oh, this is a challenge." Every single show has its own unique challenge, even if you're reviewing a show that you've reviewed before. And that's kind of the exciting thing about criticism, is it's never not challenging. It's always a challenge. It's always difficult. It's always hard to put something together in words and have it be just coherent, you know. And it's to the point where I'm able to really read certain people and think, "I would give anything to write like you." And then I read others, I'm like, "Well, okay, that's probably not going to work for me." It works for somebody, but it's not really what I'm striving for personally. So,
And it
it's
takes a long
yeah,
time, right? To find your
absolutely.
voice, to
Oh
find
yeah.
that that happy medium where it's being critical and being fair and still being a champion of live theater. I
Absolutely. Oh,
anyway.
I do. And then the other thing is sometimes you get people that like engage with you, and maybe you don't know them, and then but they just, you find them kind of popping up in your tweets more, or you find them here and there, and then you develop a relationship, and then that makes it tricky too, because like, I really didn't like your show, but I really really like you, and it's hard to take out the human part of what we do. It's hard to just kind of remove that, because I do have anxiety when I know I'm not liking a show, because I was like, okay, what am I going to say, and how am I going to say this, especially when it comes to like, it's a lot easier when when you feel that way about maybe a touring production or a big major lort, that's when you're seeing something like that. But when it's a community group and they're putting their heart and soul into it, and they're not professionals, and they're just doing it for the love of it, the last thing I want to do is come in and just not love it. But that's the reality, and that's hard.
Absolutely. It's very hard. And I think, I always kind of say, spoiler alert, theater critics like the theater. We go in
Oh yeah.
wanting to like a show. We don't go in wanting to landblast a show, or
Yeah.
it. And when we have to be critical of something, it's a much harder, I find it's a much harder review to write. It's just really um difficult. I mean, it's difficult to write
Yeah.
their criticism anyway, but it's when you're being critical and trying to be constructive, especially when you have relationships with people.
That's tough.
It's tough.
It's always tough. But no, and for me, that kind of anxiety starts right about the time where I know it's not going to happen. Like there's, like, maybe as the show's starting to come to a close, and I still haven't figured out what it's trying to do, or it just didn't connect with me, or I didn't think the message was clear, or whatever the show is attempting to do. Once for me, I find that it's just not going to happen. That's when it's like, okay. But in all fairness, I have to be fair. I have to, if I don't like something, that's makes it really hard to articulate why I don't like something. So
And you can't like everything. I
you
mean,
can
it's
absolutely not. No, because then that becomes something where that's not going to be good either, because people are going to look at you and think, oh, he's going to like that. He liked that. Oh, he liked that. He liked that. So yeah, you're absolutely, you cannot like everything.
do you remember the first show you reviewed?
I don't know if it was the first, but it was one of the earliest. It was a junior college production of something called Amigos Blue Guitar. And I just I remember I remember not liking one of the actors in particular, because it felt like he was doing this kind of fake stereotypical tropey New York accent kind of thing, and I was like not really feeling that. But I do remember that there was a pretty young guy in there in the show, and thought he was really really good. So if I'm not mistaken, that might have been my first. Yeah, that might have been my first review. That
First,
was just like a professional, published in a major daily newspaper.
nice.
Yeah.
Well, and there's nothing like seeing that, right? Seeing that
Yeah.
that
It is cool. It is very cool. You forget, you forget how much 600 words is. It's like, oh, that filled the entire page of the entertainment of one of the pages. So I was like, oh wow, didn't I forgot about that. Yeah.
Well, and when you have a blog, you don't have those limitations. If you want to write, I mean, most of us don't, but if you wanted to write 1,000 word review,
Yeah.
you
You
could.
could, I don't
And
know how
not
much.
that you're going to, because nobody's going to.
No,
But
I try to stick around for a review. I try not to cross the 800 word threshold.
mm,
That for me feels like a good tight read. It forces me to be more concise.
yeah,
And I think of the readability of it. Like, um, unless you're maybe a publicist or one of the performers and I'm writing a glowing 2,000 word review, it probably won't get read. But
yeah,
and most of the time, and most of your newspapers, um, well, at least at the Mercury News, they're looking for, any review between 650, 700 words.
Are you reviewing the virtual theater stuff?
Um, no, I'm more kind of watching and engaging with it. I'm starting to do a little bit more feature stuff. Some, I think some companies for themselves anyway have figured out how they want to move forward and how they want to put their content out there. So for me, I'm, trying to use my own platform to support that. Um, there was a reading of, like, for example, they're trying to there was one of the local professors at one of our universities, Santa Clara University, was doing a um, he was doing a reading, but it was in order to try to raise $1 million for African American theater movements across the country.
Mhm.
So, to establish a board, to be able to disperse awards and those types of things. So when I see things like that, then I'm like, "Hey, what do you need? What can I do to, let me talk to so and so, and try to help in that way." I have a feature coming up with a company. They're going to be doing something online, not Zoom, but something where they film it.
Mhm.
So we're talking about, how I can help them with that. But as far as reviewing, um, I don't see a lot of people requesting reviews right now in my inbox. That's, just even Zoom stuff, or, I'm just not getting a lot of those. There's a lot more. It's starting to swarm back up as far as features, as far as,
Mhm.
pitches for those types of things.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I've seen that too. The
Hmm.
feature articles or the press releases saying, "Can you help us amplify this?" Yeah, whatever.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
You've also done some directing.
Hmm.
So, how does being a director or having directed shows inform how you approach theater criticism? And then, alternatively, how does being a theater critic and knowing what critics are looking for in the audience inform how you direct a show?
Mm. Um, well, the thing about the thing about criticism, I think directing is the hardest thing to pick out. Like,
Mhm.
I think and a lot of times there's not a lot of details in a review when it comes to what a director did. I think that's tough because unless you're really in that rehearsal room, or it's hard to really know how much of the show is, wow, the directing of this was phenomenal, as opposed to the acting performance was incredible. You could usually pick out vision, you can usually pick out kind of themes and those types of things. But as far as my own, spending 21 years, directing high school stuff, and then community stuff, and other types of things, and freelance directing. um, I think the one tough thing about reviewing a show as a person that has directed before is you can see as a director the incremental and then the exponential growth that a show goes through, where you see maybe a kid that was like, oh, he was okay, and then it's like, oh, he's so good, but he or she is not as good, to the point where a critic, or might say, like, wow, you know but as a director, you like, but I know that they're so much better. You got to
There's
know that
growth
there was
there.
there was huge growth. So so I there's just a lot of factors that are involved when it comes to directing a show. Some shows direct themselves, honestly. You have, a cast that gets along and they're enjoyable. um I think one thing that it does help, as far as having, a knowledge as to the process of directing and being around directors and having lots of friends that direct things on much higher levels than I ever have. um it has helped me in my feature writing get people who I interview off their talking points,
Mhm.
because everybody you talk to, and you might have had the same experience, everybody you talk to, it's the most talented cast I've ever worked with, and she was incredible, and we just sat around the rehearsal room saying how amazing he was. And I know for the most part that that's not true. You don't get along with everybody in the show. You're not always just walking around thinking you're in this nirvana. So a lot of times when I'm talking and interviewing, I ask questions like, what was hard for that actor to do? What was difficult? What was challenging? What was the part of the show that the cast wasn't getting that you guys didn't really connect with? How did you handle that? Because I think ultimately my job as a writer is not to be a PR mouthpiece. My job is to try to create an interesting angle for a reader, and that's where my loyalties are. It's not to make sure that this show gets the exact correct publicity. My job is to try to get a good story. And if you can get performers, directors off their PR talking points, you're going to have a much greater base to write from. And it's going to make your story so much better. And ultimately, hopefully, it'll make people say, like, oh, that sounds really interesting. I want to go see that show. Because I do accept that we're advocates. I do understand that people are reading some of my stuff in order to get a sense of if they should go see a show or not. But ultimately, I'm pretty bullish on the fact that I don't work for a PR firm. I don't work. I'm not one of the PR people. That's not my job.
We're
So
not an extension of the theater's marketing
absolutely
arm.
not. So that's why I like to ask questions about challenges. And I think as someone that has been on the highs and lows of for me anyway, working with kids and seeing their growth and seeing how some shows were very fun for them and other shows were just a real slog. um, it definitely helps me understand that I'm sorry, but no, this was not the greatest cast you've ever worked with. This was not the greatest it's just not interesting. It's
Yeah.
just not interesting.
Um, I want to talk about theater criticism. I feel like when we were at our conference back in November,
Hmm.
even when we were at our conference a year ago, November, that our profession is changing. It's been stagnant for a while and now it's changing. Newspapers aren't devoting a lot of space to their arts coverage, if any, or they've limited it altogether. And there's a lot more blogs coming
Yeah.
out,
Hmm.
like yours and mine. And so you have a really you have a really interesting perspective for me because you freelance for a newspaper, you have a blog, and you just completed the Eugene O'Neill National Critics Institute. Congratulations on
Thank
that.
you.
So, what do you think the future of theater criticism and arts journalism is?
Well, I think the thing that is really important about criticism, and one of the reasons why I think criticism will sustain, is that, and I heard this quote, and repeated this quote multiple times at one of our conferences a couple years ago. And one of the panelists had made the comment that our job, because it's always a question that you have a room full of critics, and one of the questions that ultimately comes up for the artist is like, okay, you have this room full of critics, people that you've probably had very adverse relationships with. At some point, it's just going to happen. What do people need to know? And one of the panelists said, um, it is not what we are looking for. We are not looking for anyone to blindly affirm any work we're doing. What we are looking for is for you to put this work in a cultural context. And, just speaking of the O'Neill, there was this kind of conversation, which is people and theater companies become much more offended if you ignore them, as opposed to if you review them and maybe you don't like something. You know, theater companies would much rather you come. You know, and that's something I think is really really important. And I think people still want to see. I think still people want to see criticism that is competent, that is relevant, that respects greatly the efforts of the artist, that's fair, um, and it is a skill. It is a skill. Like, there's some people that say, "Oh, my opinion is just as good as yours," um, and I don't think that's always true. I think people that spend time and do their research and do their homework and show up and have an open mind and really engage with this play, this musical, in a very fair light, I think people still look for that. There's also the thing about theater, that it disappears. It's not like a film where you finish the film and I can go watch Alfred Hitchcock Psycho, and it still is the same movie if I watch it 20 years ago or 10 years ago or this morning. The only thing that's different is me, like the way I engage with it, as opposed to the way I might have engaged with it 30 years ago, or 25 years ago. Um, but with theater, it's a critical thing to be able to capture something in the moment, because that becomes a part of that theater's history, a part of that company's history, a part of that city's history. Because um, more than any other art form, and I heard somebody else say this a couple weeks ago, theaters have very specific relationships with their cities. We all have a theater company that really thrives in a city in a very specific way. And Chris Jones, who heads up the O'Neill Critics Institute program, was talking about, because he wrote a very comprehensive book about Chicago's theater history, and what they found was that there was some companies in the south side of Chicago that nobody really engaged with, and no critics ever went to see shows there, and so you don't have that kind of historical record, that in terms of telling a comprehensive story, you don't have that there. So as a critic, it's kind of a responsibility to help provide that cultural context and the history, like in the simplest way, possible. One of the first ways we ever learned about Shakespeare was in the form of a bad review. So so just think about that for a second. That's really kind of crazy to think about. So
um, in addition to all the other hats you wear, you sit on the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee for our Theater Critics Association, the American Theater Critics Association,
uh-huh.
which we know each other. Um,
Absolutely, yes.
with the killing of George Floyd and the uprising we're seeing with I see you white American theater, that movement that's
Hmm.
started in New York and now it's really offshooting everywhere. Do you think we're going to start seeing a shift, um, first in the stories that we're seeing on the big stages, the main stages, the people telling those stories, so the writers, directors, creatives behind the scenes, and the people like us reporting on those productions? We're going to start seeing more diversity.
you know i I definitely hope so. I believe so. Um, the one thing that I think has happened, when you specifically mentioned George Floyd, I think the one thing that's happened to us as a society, as a country, is that we cannot unsee that. Just we cannot unsee what we saw. That absolutely grotesque, horrific tragedy, and it's it was horrific, and that sent people in a zillion different directions, in terms of how we look at, something that's fascinating is how we're looking at systems, how we're
Mm.
looking at the systems that exist, the systems that we deal with, the systems and how they need to be shaken up and completely redefined, um, across the board. And when it comes to the equity that's built in the arts, in theater, um, you would definitely hope that all of this kind of energy towards building a more equitable space to be able to, be a place where everybody has the chance to have their story told. The critical importance of representation, the way it informs other art forms, the way, theater informs music, the way theater informs, film and television, all these different things, how theater is intertwined with all that. Um, it's been encouraging to see, you know, organizations say we need to do better. It's also been encouraging to have artists say we don't accept what has been going on. We are not okay with what's been going on. We are not okay with having, a 6 show season, and let's put this show in there because it fulfills a certain quota. It's people are like, that's not good enough. That is absolutely not good enough.
Let's put
Yeah,
the story show in.
yeah, exactly. So it's not good enough. So um and I see the voices that are speaking. I don't know, there's another article, it was amazing, from Tanya Pinkins, and she wrote a, did you get a chance to read that? Incredible, absolutely incredible. And it's those types of voices that should be and have been filling our discourse. So if it's going to change, it's not going to be because necessarily people are saying, okay, we better change now. It's going to be because artists are saying, no, you need to change, and it needs to change immediately, and it should have changed a long time ago. And we are no longer here to serve you. You are here for us, and it's our stories, it's our narrative, it's our time, and this is going to happen. So I'm encouraged, and I'm very hopeful that we will definitely see some huge changes. And the thing that's happening now is that, um, right now artists don't necessarily have the venues they had before, because you can't go see shows and you're not in theaters and you're not filling those spaces. But artists haven't stopped being creative. Like, they're just putting their creativity towards a whole nother angle, and they're also putting out their activism, and it's important that, we as journalists are supporting those movements, and it's important that, people of color are supporting those movements, and getting allies and building coalitions, and seeing all of the different shifts that have been happening at theater companies across the country. um, to see that continuing to move full steam ahead. So that way, when we come back from this, we will have a better space. We will have better theater. We will have better capabilities. We'll have more value to those people that are providing, our stories. We have people that are saying, I heard one person say, that theater has the best potential to be the gatekeeper for all of our stories. And that has to mean all of our stories. It can't just mean a certain narrative. It can't just be, what we think is the default, like, the white family is the default. That's the American family. Because honestly, going to a taqueria and ordering food, that's American. That's very American. Um, you know, American is not defined by just one type of narrative. And for a long time in the American theater, that has been the way it's been defined. But now I hope that's changing.
I do too. Was that Lauren Gunderson who said that? That sounds like a Lauren Gunderson thing to say.
I don't think I she might have said it. I didn't. I love Lauren Gunderson. She's amazing. She's a Bay Area person. So,
You.
and I love her work. So yeah,
I do too.
let's say it's Lauren Gunderson, because she's awesome.
And the Tanya Pinkins article that Dave was referring to, if you are part of our Theater on Racist Negativity Facebook group, posted it there so you can just scroll down through the posts and find it. I'll post it on the RDU on stage page later. It's
It
great.
is incredible. So passionate, so incredible, so eye opening, and yeah,
It made
huge.
me more of a fan of
Oh
hers.
God, yes.
Like,
How is that possible?
how is that even possible? But now I'm like a super fan.
Yeah, Tanya Pinkin's huge fan, and then she writes that. Oh my God, next level. No kidding.
And you write, of course, I was like, and you write too? Really? You
Yeah,
direct?
I know. Just
Really?
pure passion. It was so amazing. It was just so engrossing and so necessary, so important.
Really good. You and our colleague Kalendra Smith out of Atlanta, who I also interviewed,
I saw that. Yeah.
you guys gave an excellent workshop. I wish it had been longer on coded language at the National Black Theater Festival last summer for our group, our theater critics.
Hmm.
Um, I really want our readers, our followers, people watching this to be good curators of the media they consume. Uh,
Yeah.
so, what are some examples of coded language that you've seen used in articles or on television, whether it's arts journalism or not, um, that people need to key into to be those curators of the media that they're watching or reading?
I do remember some specific examples that we shared there. You know, headstrong for a woman, you know, as if it's almost a bit of a pejorative. It's like, you know, like she's so headstrong. I was like, no, she's just strong, you know, but just the connotation. Uh, there was, I think, a popular one for Latinx kind of folks is this whole idea of if a Latina is angry, she's spicy, or or this is, or the storyline is a telenovela.
That
Um,
was the example I got to tease about.
yeah, yeah, and it's just these types of things. Like, well, no, maybe she's just angry, you know, because people get angry, and we don't get angry differently. Um, you know, this I remember there was a particular thing where there was a review that a black character was unemployed because he was sleeping on a couch, and the actor actually wrote back and says, I was not unemployed. You just made that assumption, you made that leap without even having any idea. So I think, you know, when it comes to, you know, those types of reviews, you got to be really careful about stuff like that. I did it, you know, when at NCI, where, you know, last week or a couple weeks ago, where I thought that a character was a nurse and it was a woman. And so somebody said she was a doctor, she was a first year resident. And I said, oh my God, you know, so immediately I was like, oh, wow, how did I miss that? And then a couple other people chimed in and said, I thought she was a nurse too. But that was me making a huge mistake and not, you know, before I put that out there, to just kind of pay closer attention to the details of something like that. Um, I found, you know, yeah, so, you know, those are some definite examples as to, you know, the way we write things, the way we you know, put things out, the way we put things out for consumption. Um, so yeah, those are some definite clear examples that I remember seeing specifically. Also, sometimes the idea of something that is, I remember a criticism of a particular play where it was a Filipino playwright,
Mhm.
and it wasn't like, the themes were not necessarily, you know, what we would consider Filipino. And one of the criticisms of the play was it wasn't Filipino enough for me. And I thought, but, you know, that's kind of, it doesn't, what does that even mean? Like, what exactly does it mean that it has to be more Filipino? That made zero sense. You know, it was a story about a little girl who had a gun, and they were dealing with like not having their parents. And for that criticism, I thought was just really, you know, tone deaf and unfair. You know, you review the work on its merits, not on what you necessarily think it needs to be. Because being Filipino, being Latinx, being Black does not necessarily mean one thing. It doesn't mean one thing at all, because we all have very distinct, specific experiences, you know, growing up and living in this country, where we came from, you know, our parents, socioeconomics. There's a lot of details. And to not say something was, it wasn't Filipino enough, that it's really a ridiculously invalid, you know, thought or comment.
Um, we have colleagues who've we talk about tokenism, microaggressions, marginalization in the theater, and we talk a lot about it from the creative's perspective, from the actor's perspective, from the people
Yeah.
behind the scenes, directors.
Hmm.
Um, as a journalist and a person of color, have you let's talk about front of house. When you've gone to review, have you been tokenized, marginalized, or experienced other type of microaggressions? Because I think, you know, we think because we're critics, we just show up at the theater and we're welcome.
Yeah.
We're not, that's not always true. It depends on the population or what publication you're from. But have
Yeah.
you had those bad experiences as a person of color?
Oh, absolutely. I think probably the most blatant example was I was I'm just fixing my shade, sorry. I was reviewing a show, and before the show they had like a gala. So, you just the public says come early, there's going to be food and blah 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 blah. So probably the most blatant example of that is I was there and standing there, and a woman came up to me and gave me her dirty plates. And I said, I don't work here. And she kind of laughed it off and was like, oh, you were dressed like them. uh, I mean, I wasn't wearing like a red shirt and tan pants. I was probably wearing a black sweatshirt like I'm wearing now. So it was clear that she came up to me thinking that I looked like the help and not because of what I was wearing. So you have that. Yeah, you definitely have that. Or you definitely have people that are like, um, why are you here? Or like I'm reviewing the show. Well, who gave you the tickets? And you just know that other people are not having the same conversation. Or when I was walking back into later, where's your ticket? Just kind of snapping. And I was like, let me get it straight. And here it is. Okay. So yeah, I mean, yeah, you do. It's the way it is. But no, the most blatant one was definitely, having someone trying to give me their dirty plates. So
Awful.
yeah, so
Don't do that. If you're a theater person watching an art,
no, no.
the front of the house has to be as inviting and welcoming as the what's going on stage and backstage.
And honestly, most times I will be the darkest person in the room. I mean, that's just the way it is. It is, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, in speaking to your friends and colleagues from other parts of the country, what do you think the future of theater looks like? Are we all going to be wearing I keep thinking of this beef and boards thing. Are we all
Yeah.
going to be wearing
It's
it was
it's
so funny to me. I couldn't
yeah.
stop laughing. I'll share it, guys, with you privately. On
You gotta, yeah, it really has to be seen to be believed. Because it's the first real kind of content that I saw in this time. Everything you're watching now was recorded beforehand, or things that are in people's archives that they're re-releasing. But this is what we're doing now. So this is one of the first things that you're getting where people are, you're trying to do theater in a time where you probably shouldn't be doing theater just yet. So
now the interesting thing about it is I interviewed Tom Gabbard, who is with the Blumenthal Center of the Arts here in Charlotte, but he
mhm.
works very closely with the people, um, really useful media group. And so he did
Oh
send
yeah.
me some South Korea, Phantom of the Opera, PR videos on how they're doing theater, how they're running theaters there. The theaters are still open. Phantom of the Opera is still running. They closed down for a short time because some people did get sick, but they're open, they're running, people are wearing masks, they've taken precautions. And when I watched those promotional videos, I did not find it funny. I found it kind of hopeful that theater may come back. But that
Yeah.
boards thing I just found crazy. I was like, this is like
Yeah.
Saturday Night Live skit, except it's real.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think for a lot of people that first time you see that picture of it, you're like, what the hell is this? Like, what are these people doing? I mean, I think we all believe. I mean, we all believe that theater will come back, because we wouldn't still be engaging with what's out there now. Because honestly, it's like anything else. If a play is over, you get up and leave because it's done. But we're still, answering emails. We're still reaching out. We're still writing about things. We're still doing all this really kind of cool stuff. Um, so we I think we do believe it will come back. I just don't think we believe it would come back right now through this example, because that was insane.
That
It
was
was insane. It was. Yeah.
I told my husband, Penn Holderness and his wife live here, and the Holderness family, they do these crazy videos. I have to send Penn um, that video because I think he could make his own musical parody. Um, what what's on your pandemic playlist?
As far as like shows or like,
What music shows? What are you listening to?
um I do a lot of podcasting. Like, I do a lot of different shows. I like, do a lot of, content, whether it's NPR stuff or, different sports things. There's something comforting to me about, now that kind of sports are coming back. There's comforting to me about sitting on the couch and writing stuff and doing theater stuff as the game's going on, just kind of something to make noise. Um, but as far as, shows go, as far as shows, you were asking earlier about, George Floyd and police and those types of things. I just finished season 1 of Wyatt Cenac's Problem Areas on HBO,
Mhm.
and it's fascinating. It's almost like it could have been fully recorded and produced today, but it was 2 years ago. And it's deep dives into police and police culture and possible solutions and how different parts of the country are wrestling with, policing and involvement. So it's really fascinating. So, getting, grabbing some timely content has been pretty awesome. Um, but yeah, so, and just trying to read. There's some really good theater books that are out there, that, some books about criticism and things like that. So yeah, it's been kind of just engaging with, trying to take in as much as I can, because, once things kind of get moving again, and at some point they will, you just won't have that time. But I definitely find myself around 5:30 or 6 in the evening. It's like it's time to head out to a show, and it's like the weather feels a certain way, and you're like, oh, it'd be nice to just kind of get in the car and drive down, and then just kind of, get to like at dusk when the sun is starting to set, and then you walk in the theater and you walk out, it's dark. That's the kind of stuff that I wistful for.
Like,
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it really is.
what is your go-to pandemic food? Are you
Ooh. Let me tell you, I don't drink. I do not drink, but I have gotten really into bartending. We had a, long story short, we were doing a trivia night with myself and my wife and some family, and my wife loves a raspberry lemon drop. So I became really determined on how to make one. And I made one and I gave it to her, and she said it was awful. So I put it out on Facebook like, hey, I tried to make this drink. What do y'all think? And everybody, I was getting direct messages, I was getting texts, and people were like, do this or add more of this, or you got to add this, or, if it's flat, don't add soda, do add soda. And so I ended up really kind of just enjoying making drinks. So that has been kind of my pandemic thing. That's something I've kind of discovered.
some
So
people are making bread? You
I
are
see the bread. I see the whole starter sourdough thing. Yes, I see the starter. But yeah, I just, I went into, true story. I went into Bevmo like 6 times in like 10 days, and twice the guy at the counter gave me a flyer for a job. I'm like, I don't know. I just had that look like maybe I need a job and maybe I need to work there. So it was really, I was like, wow. So yeah, and I had been to Bevmo maybe once in 3 years. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, I don't need absolute, I need absolute citron. So yeah, good times. It's good
love
times.
it. I love it. I hope at our next theater conference, when we're having that final night, you can be the bartender.
I might make you the drink of your choice. You tell me what you need. I'll go to Bevmo and get everything I need.
Sit there and watch. I just
Oh.
fascinated by the alchemy.
Yeah, I bought a little measuring cup. I bought the shaker. I did it up. I got some martini glasses. Kind of did it up. It's fun. It's really fun. So that was probably something I would have never done if we weren't sheltered in place for so long. But it is what it is, and I make drinks that I'll never try.
All right.
Yeah, I
Well,
know. Not
I
bad.
I will watch you mix them at our next conference.
I'll take it, Lauren. I'll take it. I will take it.
Anyway, well, thank you so much for joining me. I always enjoy chatting with you and talking about the theater. I hope we can get back to it. The
Yes.
last show I was saying that we saw together was kind of together was Oklahoma. We went.
Yes. And our and the last show we saw together, I think, was Jelly's Last Jam.
Oh, David is the best person to go to the theater with because if there's a problem, he was watching the show, total sound problems. It was
Oh
good.
God,
Lots of
such
sound
a good
problems.
production.
At intermission, David's like, do you think if I just hop on the stage and fix the speakers, they
I
wouldn't mind?
just wanted to bring them out front. They just need to be out front and we would have been great. But no. So it's like I just let me lift it and yeah,
I
I
think
know.
I have a picture of us at that show, so I
I
will have
do, yeah.
people.
Yes, I think I have the same picture. Yeah, I think I did a selfie of us. Yeah, that
Anyway,
was fun. Yeah.
you were doing the selfie. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I can't wait to read your upcoming articles and congratulations again on the National Critics Institute. That's very exciting. One of these years, I'll have the guts to apply.
You absolutely need to apply. It's a wonderful experience. A different experience because we're on Zoom, but we get to go back next year if it all works out. But yes, please do. Please apply. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and just be safe and healthy, and hopefully I'll see you soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
In California somewhere at a show.
Yes, absolutely. And yes, please stay safe yourself. Hopefully, maybe we can go have dinner at in the Triangle sometime. That would be awesome.
We
I love Raleigh-Durham. Love it there.
have good theater here. We have good food and good theater.
Yes, beautiful, beautiful I was there one day, and I was on the Duke campus, and it was probably the greatest thunderstorm I've ever seen in my life, right there in Raleigh-Durham.
We're known for our thunderstorms and that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, well, thank you again.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
And if you tuned in late, I know some of you came in late. You can watch the entire replay once this is over on Facebook and in a couple of days, hopefully on our website. Tomorrow, North Carolina Theater is having a roundtable discussion to talk about the future of theater. They'll be doing it right here on RDU on Stage, what the Duke Energy Center is doing to prepare to bring people back into the building. So please tune in for that at 7:30. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you, Lauren. Take care.
All right, I'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.